Hello, everybody. My name is Shane Loftman, and I am the creator of FQ3C and all those different wonderful tools, formulas, and systems, processes that are behind it. For those of you who don't know what FQ3C is, FQ3C is the achievement behavioral model. And what it really does is it helps you to prove it. Meaning, if you're a person who comes from a background where you're accustomed to people telling you can't do it, you're not good enough, you're not skilled enough, you're not responsible, and you just get to that point of saying, I know I am, or maybe you're not even at that state. You want to say, where is my worth? What am I capable of doing? Then you are trying to prove it. And FQ3C enters in at that point to make it so you can prove it. For me, I was able to write a 62,000 word book in just 16 days. That comes out to about 320 to 340 pages. And you cannot do those types of things where you're going to prove it to people unless you have what's called conviction. And FQ3C is there ultimately to measure and help you manufacture your conviction, which leads to you proving whatever it is you want to achieve is actually true and something that you were meant to do. And that achievement, although it's not the end of all, be all of everything that is valuable in your life, is something that a lot of people really need to have so they can have more confidence, more competence, more exploration, more fulfillment, not from the achievement, but from everything else that the achievement brings, which leads most people to finally discovering what most of us really want, which is our purpose and our legacy. So FQ3C is powerful, and it's also the first of its kind. It is the first model to quantify this unquantifiable human behavior and these sets, these variables, and turn it into an actual evidence-based system. We have data that proves all of it. So enough of what I built here and how I'm the founder. I do want to also let you guys know this, that I don't want to take the credit. Really, God got there before I was and before I discovered it. So this really is actually his creation. You are actually his creation, and you are basically a ball of FQ3C. The reason for this video and the series of videos is I want to let you learn more about the creator, the founder of this company, and see if it might help you on your journey and also allow you to learn more about the heart and the intentions behind FQ3C. My story does begin in childhood. My first memories were at 3 years old. And one of the most impactful things that happened is I did accept Christ at a very young age, around 3, and I still remember that moment. And I also remember growing up in a home which was completely split. One side, I was watching rated R movies. I could eat any bag of chips, Doritos I wanted, but we were too poor to typically afford it. And then the other one was so strict that I was getting my butt handed to me every single day, physically, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes it felt spiritually. Growing up in a very torn household and all that conflict and all that chaos and all the turmoil, along with being an extrovert who was hated and not liked by any kids, very few friends growing up, and dealing with circumstances that no child should ever deal with, led to a series of other events in my life that were going to unfold to create a strong and passionate desire for truth and knowledge and understanding of this world to try and make sense of why. Why was it that I grew up in the way I did? And why is it that it seems like there was always just nonstop challenges? And why is it that the world didn't seem to view itself in the way that I viewed it? So 3 years old was critical because that was my first memories that eventually shaped me and mold me to who I am today. Also, my childhood before the age of 9, I experienced 2 very big events. Number 1, my family split. We went into hiding. We were running, actually, from my dad, who I was told that my dad was trying to unalive me. And we went into hiding. We literally left the state that I grew up in Idaho, and we moved to Wisconsin. And in this period of my life between 6 years of age to me moving to Wisconsin, there was a critical moment that my mom had with me. We were at church. I was not allowed to play with the other kids, so I was sitting in the pew. And all these other kids are yelling and screaming around me, and I'm just desiring that, oh man, I wish I'd just go and play with them. But my mom had me in that pew listening to the pastor, listening to the Bible verses and the scriptures that were being read. And on that screen, there was a verse that was referenced. And the pastor started talking about this verse. And my mom, while she has her Bible open, all of a sudden goes, "Oh no, Shane, what did he just say?" And I remember looking at my mom and looking at the pastor. I'm like, I don't know what he just said. I looked at the screen. I looked at the Bible verse. I was like, I think he just said this. And she's like, yes, he did. But was he telling the truth? Was he right? And I was like, he's the pastor. Of course he's right. Where she proceeded to tell me, Shane, look at your Bible again and tell me, is the pastor right? So I looked down at my Bible, and sure enough, the pastor was wrong. Everything that he was saying up there was completely counterproductive and counterintuitive to what was written that we were reading in that moment of the Bible. This taught me something, that just because you are superior, smarter, wiser, in a higher position of management or authority does not mean you're right. For, I think I was 6 at the time, watching the world around me and looking at all these adults and going, my goodness, all of these adults are wrong. They're wrong in so many different ways. And yet, with the confidence and the presentation that the pastor was displaying this idea to the congregation, he was saying as if it was true. This evidence that was displayed to me would set me off to become an entrepreneur. The next most pivotal element was that move that I talked about earlier, where we ran from my dad. We were running for our lives. And while in Wisconsin, the community there is just very different than Idaho. And so I was an outsider. I could not connect with anybody. For 3.5 years straight, I had no friends. I was a complete and total loner. And it didn't matter what I tried to do. I always seemed to not be able to make friends and be the target of all of the abuse that was happening. So this drove me to a point where I was not having a good time at home, where I still was with my mother, who would mentally, emotionally, and physically do things that were not beneficial. And then I'd go outside of my apartment complex where all the other kids are poor and I'm poor, yet I'm actually the poorest one. And they couldn't even stand my mom or stand me. They would chase me around and beat me up all the time, to going to school and not having support of teachers, because everybody assumed that, okay, there must be something wrong with Shane. Like, he must have done something wrong. There's always two sides to every conflict. And the short of it is that's not true. It's not always true. I will say it's most of the time true, but not in my case. We even sent some kids out to figure out why. Why was it they didn't like me? And most of the time it was just I raised my hands too much. I knew too much. I was too fast. I didn't have the right clothes. And that was about it. That was it. This led me to offing myself. And I was a 6th grader who was so depressed, seeking for any sort of value, that it was unfortunate I came to a conclusion that even if I died in that moment, nobody would miss me. So I went to a path where I planned and I got everything together to figure out how I could take my minimum resources that we had, and I decided to take the chemicals that were available for cleaning, create a concoction, and that was going to be my way out of life. And I was convicted. I was all in on this idea. So I remembered that I planned for it to happen while my mom was at work. I came back from school. My mom's still at work for about 3 hours, and I'm home alone. I went to the kitchen and gathered all the ingredients and brought it over to the counter. I mixed my concoction, and I thought to myself that, you know what? If I was gonna go out, I wanna do at least one thing for myself because I grew up in a very strict home, so I rarely got to do anything that I really wanted to do. And all I wanted to do was listen to music that wasn't on the Christian station. I wanted to listen to music that was secular, a fun, a cool song, just something that I wanted as my last gift to myself before I gave the gift to the world of just passing away. And God was God is funny. He decided to let me go and just go through all of the different stations, and I was going one by one, listening, and nothing was hitting for me. I remember that I went through the last station, and I just felt so sad that even in my last moments, I wasn't gonna get even a little bit of a win. It's more of like a confirmation that I needed to go, that I was not meant to be here. And I was like, if I can't have something for me, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give something to my mom. And I wanna do at least a nice act then. So my nice act was to turn it back to the Christian station, and all of a sudden I heard a beautiful cello. And I'd never heard anything like this before. And I was a musician. I played violin, and the cello was actually a very strong instrument that I really loved listening to. And this cello just sounded so different. It wasn't classical. And it caught me just long enough for me to start to listen to the lyrics. And in those lyrics, I got to discover what empathy for God looks like. So this song, Why Do You Run? It's about God looking down at these people who he's already invested in and he's already put all this love into. And yet, after they had this love, much like marriages go through, they end up getting distracted and decide to indulge in TV and drugs and other aspects of life that just aren't fulfilling and have nothing to give back to them other than void. And he's sitting there looking at them saying, why do you run? Don't you just know that I want to be with you? And once I realized that these words were about the perspective of God, I just started putting myself in that position, was like, oh my gosh, this is who I am. This is who I've been. I accepted Christ. I got baptized, everything else. And yet here I am doing such a selfish act and hurting God yet again. And this whole entire time, I didn't need these other kids. I didn't need these people. I didn't need their love. I didn't need their validation. And why would I want their love and their validation when God's been there the whole time just saying, hey, I'm here? And that moment transfigured into new lens of the world and also new lens of how I related with everybody else around me. Because I was like, wait a minute, I feel that same way that God's talking about with this person, that he's there. All he wants to do is connect. All he wants to do is have a relationship. That's all I wanted with all these other people. That's why I was never really actually fighting. I just was raising my hand too much. I was trying to get attention. I was trying to feed myself. And after I realized that I was experiencing what God was experiencing with me, and I felt that pain so much so that it was leading me to unalive myself. I just came to this conclusion of, oh my goodness, God knows me better than I ever could have expected. And how dare I do that to God, what these kids are doing to me? And I just want a friend. Then it hit me where I realized this is every person is doing this with God. Jesus just wants to be with you. He's been there. There's a gift waiting for you. All you need to do is take it. And he'll never take it away from you. He'll respect your decision and let you leave, but he'll stay right there and say, hey, I'm here. I love you. All you need to do is come to me. And he's been doing that for 8.2 billion people today. every single one of those people were hurting God. And the fact that he still had forgiveness, he still didn't think about himself. He still constantly was thinking about his creation, thinking about his children, thinking about these people that he loved amidst all of that pain. It allowed me to have empathy. I think potentially for the very first time in my life. The very next day I woke up, went to school. Obviously, I didn't unalive myself. And I remember sitting down to this kid, call him Daniel. And sure enough, one of the kids did like a spitball or something like that. And teacher went and looked at me and I was like, yeah, sure, it was my fault. And it turns out it was actually this kid who was next to me who did it. And I remember looking over to him and I was like, hey, are you okay? How are you doing? Right after he literally just tried to get me in trouble. And that was the start of me learning so much about people. I started digging in to understand who are people, how do they work, why do they exist, what's the whole purpose of everybody. I started gathering all their stories. I started basically being a Dr. Phil for all these other kids who were my age and even older eventually. I remember being in high school and there were kids, I was a freshman and I'm being Dr. Phil for seniors and alumni. It was a wild experience. And this all helped me get a foundation of psychology, negotiations, a foundation of viewing life through other people's lenses. Because that's ultimately what empathy really is. It's you being able to see through the other person's lens so that you can fully immerse yourself and experience them where they're at to the best of your ability, of course. And I do want to say this as well. My life growing up, I would never go back. You couldn't pay me any money. I would never go back. It was so destructive. It was so crazy. It was nonstop heartache and confusion. And I was just having to solve all this stuff alone at the end of the day. Even systems that were in place that should have worked, that should have been trustworthy, that should have been things that I could count on, didn't. I even went to a college preparatory school, a private school, and I know we didn't have money. I actually got a scholarship to go. And in this scholarship, I had a math teacher who ultimately screwed me over by their own decision. And when they did that, I didn't realize that it was going to actually free me. My school teacher prevented me from going on the path that I wanted to go on, which is becoming an aeronautical engineer, was going to free me from that bondage of that idea of what I had planned for myself. So with this empathy and with this newfound discovery that I can't trust any authority to hold my future in their hands, I was like, I will not do it anymore. I started teaching myself music and piano. And I remember I was skipping class, coming in early, staying home late as often as I could as long as my mom didn't beat me. And I would be on that piano 24/7 as often as everywhere. It didn't matter. I'm on the piano. We'd be on the street. There's a piano, I'm on it. And I didn't have one, but I took every opportunity. This conviction was real that I needed to be able to be a master of music. So I remember sitting down one day at school and this teacher, not even from our school, a completely different school, just visiting, walks into the room and they're hearing me messing around with chords. And they just asked me, hey, can I help you? Or do you need anything? And I said, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how's this augmented chord versus this diminished chord work. And in 2 seconds, her answer was so simple, just raise the fifth and lower the fifth. And I was like, oh my gosh, why is it that nobody would tell me this? Why is it that nobody would take a moment? I had a music teacher that knew this. I had multiple students that obviously had to have known this. Why is it that it was so hard to get just a little bit of help? And I was like, man, if I had even an ounce of help up to that point for me to become a musician, I was like, I would have already been famous by that point. I was able to play up to 15 instruments at one point, and you could pretty much put just about any stringed instrument in my hands, and I could figure it out in 5 minutes. And I was playing songs and my theory and everything else. So I had a very extreme talent for it. But I was too poor. I couldn't get help at the end of the day. And I remember sitting there and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a business. I'm going to create a business that makes it so that students and kids like me or people like me who can't afford the instrument, can't afford the lessons, will get a free education, but it's going to be a profitable business. It's going to be a for-profit business that's actually going to be making sales. And so I built this whole model out. And that became my driving force, my North Star, if you will, for the next 15 years. What's wild is that because of this decision, I ended up being afforded so many incredible opportunities that other kids rarely ever got unless they had friends, family, people paying for them. And so here I am, completely a fish out of water, and yet I am absolutely climbing, though I'm a fish. I ended up joining a team where did live performances, even did one where it's recorded on YouTube, also available on Spotify. I was also just constantly recruited by leadership. I was constantly put into leadership positions, all because I decided that I was going to stop listening to authority unless they could prove themselves. That was the short of it. And I continued to become more popular as I continued to learn how to negotiate, how to read people, how to understand their feelings, their emotions, the backgrounds, the system, the operations of that world, and was able to barter everything. My mom wouldn't let me get a job. So all these things were just adding up to each other. And I somehow kept on being in that top position, though I had nothing. This continued to be a blessing, and I continued to make decisions that were scary and wild and uncomfortable, and I had no one to rely on, so I had to suffer all the consequences. And one of those other new decisions was when I was 18 years old, I left my home and I went from Wisconsin and went down to Atlanta to meet my father for the first time in years. It turned into he's literally the devil, like I was going to be Satan's son type of thing. And I was prepared to die. I was prepared to go in and die for the sake of learning the truth. If you want to know the type of person I am, that is it. I faced those types of challenges in my life where I thought that I was going to get on that plane. I was going to show up in Atlanta on the airport. My dad was going to get me in the car and he's going to drive me off into a place and say, ha, I finally got you. And then shoot me, stab me, whatever it be. Whatever his choice was going to be. And sure enough, I met my dad and I learned that my childhood wasn't true. That all these things I grew up were pretty much just lies. And so now I had no truth to base anything off of as far as my past was concerned. This shook me to the core. On top of that, I was sick of being poor. And 18 years old, I was blessed to meet a gentleman, and long story short, I became, I think, the only 18-year-old that he ever brought on into his financial services team. And so 18 years old, I'm looking at people's policies. I'm looking at amortization schedules. I'm looking at these contracts, and I'm learning about the market. I'm learning about economics to top down, up, macro, micro. I'm learning about the challenges. And what's so interesting is because of the environment that I was in, I actually knew about 2008 before it happened. I just turned 18. I didn't have enough time to prepare or enough cash or anything like that to turn it into a profit. But I did end up growing and winning and producing and getting licensed underneath those types of conditions in 2008 when everything's burning. What's interesting also is I did not fall in love with finance. Actually, I hated finance. I could not stand it. I was a creative. I was a kid who wanted to play music. And I had this music business idea to help other musicians. My heart was to help others, which is so common in most entrepreneurs. And in having that heart to help others, I stuck through the crap, the things I didn't want to do with finance for years. I did not enjoy sales. I did not enjoy canvassing. I did not enjoy looking at those reports. I didn't enjoy sitting up and trying to read policies. I didn't enjoy trying to create cases against these competitors. I did not like any of it, but yet I was still successful at it. I just knew I needed to master money. That's it. I just needed to master it. The reason why I bring that up is not because I'm good at money and that's my background, but because there's two things that happen within this financial discovery. One is I learned what I really liked, and that was actually teaching. My favorite thing, and pretty much the only thing I really liked about the financial stuff, was the fact that I loved taking the new hires and teaching and training them and instilling them with all the information, all the knowledge that I had. And I loved seeing their successes, way more than me getting mine. Heck, I'd grown up with no money and bartering for however many years. Money didn't really have much of a drive for me, but seeing their success, their eyes light up, was just incredible. I just could not get enough of it. And that's when I realized that I need to get into education somehow. Now, the other thing that I learned is the value of data and the value of a team and the value of commitment and the value of having a dream and the value of going all in and knowing what that felt like being against the grain. An 18-year-old kid is going to have a way harder time trying to talk to somebody else about their home, their kids, their mortgage than somebody else who's 40 years old, 50 years old, who also has had kids and a mortgage, right? It's unbelievable how hard it is. And I got to learn these skills in preparation for me to continue to build and do my business model that I wanted for music. This also helped me boost my confidence. I got to learn that there were lawyers out there and doctors out there and all these different people who were making way more than I was, and yet their net value was less than mine. Their net worth was in the trash. If something happened to them today, they would go bankrupt. And if something happened to me that day, I'd be just fine. That type of thing. I'd be in the positive. And finance as my foundation with this newfound understanding of teaching as where I wanted to go led me to make some very critical decisions. One is I decided that I was going to become an entrepreneur. I was like, I need to learn business. So I started building businesses. I started with marketing and advertising, videography, photography, graphic design, website development. With my financial background combination, I then started testing out different business models, everything from doing restaurants to doing drywall to engaging with startups in nonprofit space and NAACP to getting engaged with like magazines. I just was like, I need to master sales, I need to master marketing, advertising, and I need to master finance. And I need to master understanding the models because my model is very complex that I wanted to build. Along the way, I also learned and actually fell in love with data. And then I fell in love with finance. So much so that through all of this development and I continued to teach, train the whole entire time, years and years, with no degree, I ended up being able to experience what I really loved. And that came down to is actually teaching. And I got to experience what success looks like with several different business models. I also got to experience what being completely torn apart looks, and even became homeless at one point, sleeping on fertilizer at night at a facility, and I had to negotiate for the company vehicle just so I could drive around within a certain radius. And I spent all my time just trying to figure out how can I get better? How can I learn more? How can I just do this? The amount of times I called for help, there's just nothing. Pretty much what I got as far as whenever I'd call for help was, "Hey, you got this." And you know what? That was the best advice and best thing that they did for me. Because had I gotten the help that I really wanted, I would have never learned how to become scrappy and figure things out that I really needed. So, out of sleeping on top of fertilizer, I also taught myself how to listen to audio at 3 times the rate and increase my ability to listen, increase my ability to comprehend, increase my ability to compute and synthesize information. Come to find out, I was just finally joining the party in the game to where the real successful people are and the real achievers. Their minds are working like that 24/7. I had to force mine to become it. And with this newfound love of data and everything else that came with it, I realized, you know what I need to do? I need to actually think about potentially putting down my model for music that I developed and just commit to getting better in business and also, for the first time, do something I love. It was a 5-year journey from that point. 5 years of insane blood, sweat, and tears I put into that. And nope, I didn't get my degree. I eventually became the youngest investment advisor facilitator for a Fortune 100 company, to my knowledge. And that's just short for anybody who is in investments with their series licenses, investment bankers, going onto the trading floor, whatever was going through my courses that I was teaching and training. It was great. It was amazing. And eventually I was able to meet my wife. During all that time, I was also showing up to events. I was showing up to summits. I was connecting with speakers. I was connecting with movers and shakers. I was connecting with all these different people. And I was listening to these nuggets that were being brought to me from really well-known names all the time. And what I found is that all these nuggets are not untrue. What is untrue is that every single nugget is the right nugget for you at that specific time. And this is starting to get into where FQ3C is getting its seeds planted for me. As I went and was spending money, as I went and I was listening to all these gurus, as I went and I was engaging in buying products and doing everything I could to get better, I realized that they all were missing something and nobody could tell me what it was they were missing, but I always felt it. And everybody else could feel it too. Everybody else could feel it. Every time that somebody else would try to give them the nugget or give them the secret, it was either in their head, it was true that it was just too much to say or give. So just listen to me and I'll be your coach and pay me for it. Or it was on the other side of, I'm just going to give this person one nugget that helped me. That was the best nugget. And most times something like consistency is key or whatever. And you know what? I tried all of them. Tried every single one. And all of them are untrue. They're all true for somebody, but they're untrue for everybody. And that's what I was able to come to the conclusion for. Because I did see people who walking across coals and fire was the thing that they needed to unlock their brain to get over some sort of fear that all of a sudden made it so they were 10 times better. And that was the thing they needed. And I also got to see all the other group of people of 40, 60 people walk away and go, that hurt. And people saying, oh, you just need to go underneath a cold shower. That's how you get motivated. Get your brain ready. And I'm like, I just wake up and get to it. And I'm more productive than most people I know. Just wake up. Just go. If you're convicted, just do it. I got more and more pissed off. Combined with when I was a 3-year-old and I already didn't like leadership, combined with being screwed over by my math teacher. And I'm like, I refuse to let them screw me over ever again. I just don't want to listen. I want to listen, to learn, and to use, and I did, but I don't want to listen to people who aren't going to be truthful and holistic. And everybody's just listening to anything and everything they can get because they're just trying to figure it out. And what's funny is most of these guys who are successful are doing the same exact thing. They're just trying to figure it out every day. They were just in the right place, right time, circumstances, with the right behaviors, with the right person, and it really is pretty much just a moon, sun, stars aligning for most of these people who you're looking at and watching. That's not to discredit the amount of effort and time and energy and preparation and conviction that they did put forward, because conviction is required to get there. It's 100% mandatory. Every single one of them, absolutely, without fail, will have conviction, period. They will. You're witnessing conviction in motion is what you are, right? But they still don't know what's actually going on. And so it's blind leading the blind. And my desire for teaching the truth, I felt like I couldn't ever give a good answer because everything was so confusing and made no sense. And I would have students come to me all the time like, hey, how was it that you did XYZ? Becoming that investor without ever having a degree, switching from frontline sales into HR, all sorts of stuff. And I could never give them a good answer. I give them the best truthful answer I could, but it's very long, drawn out, or honestly, it's not technically all of it. I don't really know what it is. And I always saw these students that normally I'd be able to see these light bulbs go off and these eyes become so bright and vibrant, and it would turn into sadness and disappointment that I couldn't answer this for them, because it's what we all want. This question of what's the truth about basically success? What's the truth about what makes all these things work and happen? And what's the thing that it makes it so we're no longer blind to everything? I was blessed to have something really bad happen to me. I know it sounds crazy to say that. One of these business deals was going like crazy. We did a lot in a very short period. That business deal, all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, got taken out from underneath my feet. And I was like, what the heck happened? How does that even make any sense? And the founders were so done with the model. And it was an overnight type of thing that they were like, yeah, you can get the company, take all the IP, do whatever you want. We don't want to do this anymore. And so 15 employees just gone. And the three main executives that were helping push everything were like, okay, I guess we're going to just try and take this and maybe salvage it somehow. So we took it, created a new company, created a new entity, did a whole nother institution, another startup. And I think by this point I was already beyond 30 plus startups that I'd been part of. And we did all right. It wasn't anything crazy to go home to mommy, especially after we were licking our wounds from that prior deal. But there's something that happened, which was everybody kept on being confused at what we were doing. Everyone, like, nobody could figure it out for whatever reason. It eventually led us to try and figure out Google's algorithm. So we started reverse engineering Google's algorithm. And when we started doing that, we did come to the conclusion of the first model, the first form of the foundations of what would eventually become FQ3C. We just didn't have enough time to dedicate towards that business. It just kept on running on autopilot to the best of our ability. And not that we parted ways, but it was bare bones, minimum. Everybody was really focusing on the other things that they needed to take care of in their lives. But this reverse engineering of Google thing, there's something about it. Something that just kept on nagging at me. I was like, Google's one of the most profitable businesses in this world, and their whole entire business model really is built on truth. Can they get you the most true information to you as fast as possible? That's the model. If they can get to you as fast as possible, then you're happy with them because now you can make quality decisions. If they give you bad information, you make bad decisions and you don't want them anymore. So literally the full aspect of Google's integrity is built upon this premise of delivery of truth in the shortest time possible. But I was like, okay, what are they actually indexing? Like, how do they determine what's actually true or not? That was the question. And I was on my own, and I was like, if Google figured it out, I wonder if other companies figured it out too. Sure enough, after doing digging, figured out that, yep, every single social media, every single search engine, every single indexing is based upon these 5 variables, which was frequency, quality, consistency, continuity, clarity. And obviously we hadn't decided what the names were at that point, but we could identify it. I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if this works for humans too. If it works for Google, it has to work for humans. And sadly, I figured out that it doesn't. Not that alone anyways. Or I should say it works If it's not generalist, you need hyper specificity, it doesn't work. Once we figured out that all these other companies were using the same thing, and we also figured out that model doesn't work on people, just started poking. That's the short of it. I was just like, okay, there has to be something that works here. There has to be a translation between the success of the founders, the success of the business, the success of people around there, including parts of my own story. And it has to come together. Like, what is it? Where does it actually exist? What I want to figure out was actually what are the behaviors that makes it so the person goes and makes a jelly sandwich, ties their shoe, wakes up in the morning, drives their car, goes to work another day, comes home, does it on repeat, and a billionaire who wakes up, views their notebook, goes into a cold shower, has their first morning video call while they're running on a treadmill, gets off of that, gets dressed, has their driver ready, gets out of the car, goes into the private jet, flies across the United States, maybe the world, touches down, has a driver. Like, if you're listening to both of them, I'm describing two different lives, two different mornings of two different people. One's the regular average American that you might describe, and the other one's the billionaire life. But yet, they're really so similar. The only difference is mode of transportation and easeability between the two. From an outside perspective, meaning like not looking at the person themselves, looking at all the stuff around them. But when you look at the individual themselves, so different of mentality, so different of process choices, so different in priorities. And yet it's so similar. These behaviors, there has to be something that dictates both of them. That was the question I wanted to set out for. And after communicating, being exposed, watching, listening, being on projects and everything else with actual billionaires, having relationships with people who are in the higher echelons of income, I got to see their fears, got to see the dimensions of that world. With the entrepreneurial world, I got to see the real, true hard work and appreciate it in a different light. And then went over just thousands and thousands and thousands of different circumstances at different scales, and finally was able to come up with the fact that every single circumstance, period, even down to a single cell organism, as long as this thing has life in it, it behaves with the full 12 variables of FQ3C. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, we actually figured this out. But finance taught me something. If it's not quantifiable, it's not real. If you don't have proof, it doesn't exist. Plenty of people told us all the time things like, I'm a millionaire, or I have a business, or I make $60,000 a year. And you sit down with them and you go, no, you don't. You make $40,000 a year. The proof is in the data. It's in the numbers. It's in the FQ3C at the end of the day. We set out to quantify all of the behaviors. Guys, I gotta say, it was so hard. It was crazy hard to try and figure out how to take something that's completely subjective and turn it into empirical data. And then had to come up with the behavioral model as a visual. And that took months and months of just thinking about it. That was not thousands. That was probably hundreds of thousands of different variations I went through. I can't even describe how many variations we went through. Which is interesting because then we came up with this. Much like the double helix is for your DNA, this is the behavioral map for your human behaviors, or any entity's behaviors for that matter. The growth of this has been so hard. After we figured out how to quantify it, it was time to get to work on piecing everything together. And when I say we're probably on version, I don't even know, 90 on the website, we have built out this website or readjusted this website probably over 90 times up to this point. Even the logo, it changed multiple times because I had something before I actually figured out what it really was. And we went through circumstances where doctors and psychologists were trying out the model, and we were going like, why is it that everybody's just coming with weird data? It made no sense to us. So we had to go and figure all that out. And just over and over and over again, there was just so many setbacks, so many pieces that were slow that we wanted. And yet, looking back, we have built this so fast. Wild how fast this is. We're going to be coming out of the woodworks in basically year 2 from launching, and we're going to be really well off financially. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for it. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Undercover Billionaire. They're doing 90-day sprints. I've basically been doing that 90-day sprint now for well over, I'd say, 3.5 years. The difference between trying to build the businesses that they're doing is that stuff's already exists. That's literally Grant Cardone said, I'm going to go back to giving the tried and true old ways, old methods. The other two basically did food. Listen, if you want to start businesses that are like that, by the way, what they did is absolutely insane and crazy. Kudos to you guys. Absolutely amazing. And you guys talk a lot about these types of things too, right? It was conviction of the why, it was conviction of the end goals, conviction of these evaluators coming in, right? But now trying to apply that towards something that doesn't exist. 90 days is reasonable for something like that. Because there's already somebody who knows somebody who's doing all those things within those industries that they chose. There's nothing out there on how to build a brand new behavioral model from scratch. How do you build up products and services? How do you build up an actual business? How do you get those sales? How do you do your marketing advertising? How do you incorporate? How do you figure out what the heck your thing is that you built in the first place? It was a lot like building a propeller for the first time. It does something, but you just can't quite figure out that, oh, it's actually meant to be put onto a helicopter. Like the helicopter doesn't exist yet. You just built a propeller and you're trying to, like, what does this thing do? Just use as a windmill to tell the direction of the wind at one point, like literally. Who knew that its real best purpose would be for something more along the lines of flight? Humans flying in the air, and how many generations that took just to get there. There's no book that will help you on that. And the only way that we've gotten to this point this fast with a brand new product, with a brand new industry and a brand new market, completely blue ocean, is because we're basically doing the equivalent of the work that you witness on that show and just been doing it every day. Every single day. I was able to see the model before there was any sort of products, services, anything built for it. And it was honestly with the help of just discovery and meeting people that we got to see the opportunities to literally change the insurance field, opportunities to change the health and wellness and psychology field, opportunities to help with sales forces, opportunities to help with mergers, acquisitions, opportunities to help with suicide ideation, opportunities to help startups, opportunities to help athletes. Just the opportunities are endless. Each one of those independent markets is a brand new business. It's effectively a brand new business. This is literally the definition of building an empire. How else are we going to get FQ3C out there? I don't see any other way other than build it and make sure that people know about it. So, I don't know if you've noticed, but my drive here hasn't been monetarily driven. I really wanted to show people too is that you can build something as difficult as this with just driven off of the fumes. Like, I think I started with maybe a $500 or $400 budget, something like that. Super small. So The rest of it has been money reinvested from sales. Like I said, we've had black months almost every single month. All of it's been reinvested from the business. All- And the rest of it's just sweat equity. In terms of sweat equity right now, I have no less than about $2.5 million worth of sweat equity into this thing. I'm probably actually closer to $3.5, $4 million at this range. And then there's still so much more to do. It's crazy to think about how much more still needs to be done. So I'm doing this for my family. I am doing this for my son, my daughter. I'm doing this for my wife. I'm doing this for the people that have stepped up to help me and got burned. I'm doing this for the people that have screwed me over, not to hinder them or hurt them, but I actually want to help them. The reason why they felt like they had to screw me over is because there was just not something that was right. There was something that wasn't true. There was something that was hidden. And if FQ3C was part of them, way more of those stars would have been successful. Way, way more. Now, I'm doing this for the people who originally I wanted to build a Konya for, which is the music model. I think I'm also doing this to fight these freedom burglars, which might even be yourself, to your friends, your family, to politicians, to corporations, all of it. There's so many people just trying to steal your freedom. This is part of that solution. And if we can even make one or two people get out this crazy, massive scheme that's been put in front of you, the better. And what's so amazing is that this model makes it so that I don't have to try and teach you every single little thing. What you do have is a model to manufacture the behaviors and convictions you need, and you can measure that progress. So you can leverage your reticular activation system. You can leverage the dopamine that's going through your head. You can leverage the very same reason why you love those games on your phone. You can leverage it for you to actually go and freaking do something with your life. I'm doing it for those people, the people who really want to do something with their life. I'm doing this for those underdogs. Everyone loves an underdog story, but man, being an underdog myself, I don't love the story. I don't want there to be any underdogs. It sucks. It's brutal. I'd rather just have people winning and being successful. I still remember being 18 years old, told by my own parents, my own sister, you're never going to make it in finance, and being told I was too irresponsible and nobody would trust me and I didn't know anything about money and stuff like that. I don't think any of my friends or family allowed me to sit down and look at their financials. Not a single one. I had to build completely from a scratch market. People I didn't know from Adam were the only ones who would actually even give me a shot starting out. I think I'm doing this also to make it so there's just some truth in the world. There's so much lies and deceit and intentional murkiness that's added to the waters. And then people are told truth that's completely just a lie. And then they take it and they run with it as if it's true, which then further just perpetuates complete and total craziness. It happens all the time. I want to fight that. I'm so tired of it. I remember when I first started out in finance, one of my competition companies was State Farm. I remember there's this woman, very nice. I could tell why people loved her. She did some sort of event. I showed up because I wanted to learn about my competition and I wanted to see, am I actually at the right place or should I be somewhere else? I think that's a good thing. Always be looking to see, are you at the right place? Being at the right place is one of the most important things that you can do in your life. You got to fight for it. It's very rare that you're going to find that you're going to be at the right place with you doing nothing. For active people trying to achieve something, become better, stronger, wiser, make money, whatever. I was trying to go there, and I remember this woman, and I got into a conversation. I'm pretty fresh, maybe 7 months in to finance. And this woman was talking to people about dividends. I'm like, "Oh, so you investment products?" And she said, "No, I don't sell investment products." I'm like, "Why are you talking about the dividends then?" The way that she's talking about dividends as if it's like an investment. And she was like, "Oh, because it's a dividend." And I'm like, "How long have you been here?" And she was like, "Oh, I've been here for 15 years or something." She'd been doing this for a long time. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then I tried pointing out the truth to her, and she just wanted to ignore it. She could have easily looked it up, taken just a second to see if I was telling the truth or not, which I was. I was like, "No, the dividend for an insurance policy is excess of return premiums, not returns on investments. It's very different things." They're sick of that stuff. And here she is going around, and she's been teaching people in their company, and they have their own offices, and it's just a mass amount of insanity and confusion, and it's not even really her fault if you think about it. It's the lawyers and these other lobbyists and all these other people who are just trying to, again, be a freedom burglar. That's their job. That's what they get paid for, is to take your freedom from you so that they can have freedom. I have so much stuff that I've been through. It's crazy. If I really look at it and the amount of people I've talked to and had a chance to sit down with and really get to learn about their lives, I would estimate that I've probably had the equivalent of a person who's lived in their 50s, maybe even 60s at this point of experience. And I just turned 35. Pretty wild to think about. Anyways, I hope that you find freedom. I hope that you live a life of conviction. I hope that you step up and not only prove it, but accept the challenge of me telling you that I want you and I challenge you to prove it. Whatever your goal is, prove it. Go make it happen. And if you want to make it happen faster than FQ3C, 100% of the time, every single time. And somebody else I think it was like 3 months or 6 months or something, that they had a 1,500% increase in revenue. And this isn't even something that's meant to be a revenue generation system or model or marketing or anything like that. It's literally just you doing the right behaviors and you becoming convicted and you manufacturing that in yourself, manufacturing that in your team. That's all it is. It's incredible how much loss of money and time and energy is put out there because you just aren't convicted, or because your team isn't convicted, or because your family has never witnessed conviction to even know how to emulate it. Not to say conviction is right or wrong, but sure gets you to the truth faster. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you so much for taking this time. You didn't have to. I don't even know how many people are going to watch this and want to learn about me, but I did want to put this out there for not only myself, but also, again, my friends, my family, people who just like to see a little bit more into who is this person, the creator. I think it's important. In good old-fashioned FQ3C, it's good to see the continuity, and it's good to get some clarity. And hopefully this is bringing a little bit more understanding to my internal frequency, quality, continuity, and clarity, allowing you to get some of that in you as well, so that you start living a life where you have a high amount of frequency with a high amount of quality and consistency for every single objective and goal that you set your mind to. With that, hashtag prove it, and see you on the other side. Kudos.